New age, same old me.
22 years is a long time. I've been through a lot, and experienced many forms of media that really helped me form my own opinions and interests. Video games have always been a go-to source for me to express myself to the public. I was exposed to several other forms of media at young ages, especially in the film and show department, but video games just had that little charm that kept me coming back for more, and they've become some of my biggest motivations for starting this YouTube channel. So after some decisions and some assistance from a small chunk of my audience, I'll go ahead and talk about 22 games that I can safely call my favorites. Aside from the usual stuff, I want to make clear that this list is ordered by which games I value more than others, not which ones are technically better in quality. That might be obvious to a lot of you, but I want to make this clear in case there's someone out there who wants this to be another best games ever video. These are just the ones that matter to me the most. Quite a fitting thing to talk about for the celebration that is about to unfold. Let's start things out with a simple genre, shall we? The 2D platforming genre is one that has been around for a while and still continues to thrill me. The simplicity of the genre makes it one of the easier ones to modify to your liking, and really makes something special and unique about it. There can be 2D platformers that are fast-paced and really get you going, like the Mega Man series and its various inspirations, but at the same time, there are games that take a much slower and more methodical approach, like the Donkey Kong Country series. But no matter what, I keep on finding myself coming back to Freedom Planet. Prior to mid-2017, this was a Sonic game by devoted fans of the series, before we actually got a Sonic game by devoted fans from the series. But regardless of that, or the fact that this was initially a Sonic fan game rebranded into a new IP, establishing its own identity, this game is still a blast to play. Controls are spot on, the levels give you plenty of room to go fast or explore at your own leisure, and the various different playable characters provide their own way of playing the game. The latter is especially apparent not only because of each character's different abilities, but also because they don't go through the same set of stages, giving incentive to try them all out. There's also some incredible bosses that are a blast to fight, and even some provide a great challenge as well. And if that's not enough, the story is actually not that bad. I mean, sure, the tonal shifts can be a bit jarring, and some cutscenes overstay their welcome, but the writing's really good, and I found myself caring about what will happen in the end. And hey, they managed to make the characters likable and give them very solid voice acting, so for a platformer indie title, that does deserve at least a mention. No matter what game I play of this genre, I know that I can come back to Freedom Planet for a roaring good time. And because it's available on quite a few consoles, PC included, there's really not many excuses for you not to play this. It's truly excellent, and I hope Freedom Planet 2 delivers. Whenever that comes out. Have you ever had that one game that did not come off the heels of any franchise that you just wanted to get your hands on the minute you saw it? Like what was shown off from visual style to gameplay hooked you? Then you know exactly how I felt when I laid eyes on Child of Light, a game that was, at one point in time, among my top 5 favorite games. That may no longer be the case, but I still do love this game. Weirdly enough though, looking back at it, the story really isn't anything that complicated. It's pretty simple in groundwork, but for an RPG, it did do its job in keeping me at least interested in what was going on. This is mostly because I was really into all the tasks and adventures of the main protagonist, Aurora, and all the crazy things she comes across. Not to mention, the writing for this game sounds like it came out of a children's book parents read to their kids at nighttime, which sounds odd, but it's nothing I couldn't get used to. In fact, the farther I went, the more charmed I felt by it. The world of Lemuria also captivated me. It looks absolutely stunning thanks to the art style that looks like it was drawn or painted first before being put into a computer. The world gives you so much room to explore and find extra battles, goodies, or even level challenges that do reward you for your curiosity, especially when you get the ability to fly later on. Combat's great too. It's simple in concept, but fun in execution with layers of strategy that you can use to disrupt your opponent or slow down their attacks so that you can have an easier time. Newcomers will find this battle system very welcoming, and even seasoned veterans will find something to enjoy. Really, this is just an immensely solid RPG with a simple yet effective story and a great world to explore. And for RPG nuts like me, it's kinda all you need sometime. Also, it's really weird to think that this was made in 2014 by Ubisoft, and in that year they made... Oh dear. Oh, more Ubisoft. Cool. Okay game! Move for Ubisoft's mistakes gone now. Yeah, it doesn't feel that long ago since I talked about Rayman Legends, even though it's actually been more than a year. But yeah, I still love it now. The controls are super slick and make any sort of platforming a joy to do. The level design takes full advantage of what you can do and has the ability to be fast and exciting when it needs to be, or slow and methodical when it needs to be. And no matter what, the pacing is not really hard because of all the ideas it has, nor does it feel like the game doesn't know what to do with itself. If all that wasn't enough, there's even tons of collectibles and secret levels to go after, a lot of which are levels of Rayman Origins, this game's predecessor, some really fun and creative bosses, and of course, a co-op mode. And while yes, co-op mode does enhance the experience, I say that you don't really need it to experience the game's magic. And I also have to commend the positively gorgeous art style. Seriously, this has to be one of the best looking 2D platformers I've ever played. It truly does make each environment distinct and give the game a lot more personality, especially when they use slapstick humor to take advantage of it. There's so much to do and so much fun to be had that you'll be having a blast no matter how you slice it. And if you haven't tried this game out, it's on every modern system except your car. Go get it! Now it's time for another one of my favorite gaming genres, the hack and slash. I've always been a fan of this genre just for the sheer satisfaction of feasting over up to a ton of enemies at once. And while I do love the more simplistic games of the genre that are more about the crowd clearing, like Fire Emblem Warriors and Sengoku Basara, I also love the more complex games present in the genre, like Devil May Cry and God of War. Which leads me to one game that I keep on coming back to. You know the music, so say it with me. Yep, that's Metal Gear Rising in a nutshell. Even though I jumped into this game without much knowledge from previous entries in the Metal Gear saga, I remember all the fun I had playing this gem and how much time I've put into it. It's a simple game in concept, with you using 2 or 3 buttons to combine attacks you have in order to cut down the opposition. But man, is that utterly satisfying! The game encourages you to think of whatever crazy combos you can pull off because of a mechanic called Blade Mode, which you can flat out cut off body parts of enemies and either disable them or straight up kill them, so you can salvage their electrolytes to restore your health. In a way, the game is rewarding you for cutting up your enemy just right and adhering to its rules. And while the parry can be a bit wonky sometimes, especially on higher difficulties, using it is very satisfying when it causes fights to turn in your favor at the right moment. This is especially emphasized in boss fights, which to me are the best part of the game. They're a really solid challenge, well, most of them anyways. They're constantly surprising you with scenario changes and different attacks, and they are a true blast to fight. Guess it's a good thing that these bosses were my intro to Platinum Games' magic. There's also things like a fun story, an absolutely rocking soundtrack, extra upgrades and costumes, and various DLC campaigns that keep you coming back for more. So really, it may not be reflective of the quality of the series it comes from, but honestly, I don't care. I can easily sit down, play this, and let it rip! I will admit that I'm more of a fan of games that really try to thrill you with the gameplay they provide, but I do respect those willing to go the extra mile and have a cinematic feel, like you're watching a movie or watching a visual myth come to life. When done well, I can actually get wrapped up in the world and the story that the game tries to create, and my experience can be enhanced in a different way. And so we come to a game that may consider to be one of the best examples of this, The Last of Us. Here we have a game where honestly the story and moments really made it shine. Don't get me wrong, the gameplay is great, but without a strong narrative, The Last of Us wouldn't nearly be as good. Despite a bit of a generic setup with a virus causing people to turn into zombie-like creatures and putting the Earth in phenomenally bad shape, The Last of Us doesn't make it about eradicating the virus or shooting zombies, but instead centering it on 2 people, those being Joel and Ellie, trying to survive the harsh Earth and just getting to safe places. And this adventure is made incredible thanks to the likability of Joel and Ellie and the various challenges that they come across. It's not just action this, action that, and then things are over. The game does show how difficult these tasks are realistically, and that both of them have been through really hard times, and they constantly develop as characters, and look out for each other over the course of the game. And with all these obstacles, you really feel both their physical and emotional struggles. Heck, I actually got teary-eyed throughout many moments in this plot because I cared about Joel and Ellie that much and wanted to see them get through their journey alive. And survival is not just prominent in the story, it also has a role in gameplay. While yes, the game does have some shooter elements, the thing that elevates the tension is the amount of items you get throughout the course of the game. Resources are very limited, making considering times to use specific weapons crucial. But the devs took that into account by giving you the right amount of enemies and a good idea for when it is a good time for one weapon to be used and when you should conserve one. You're not underpowered, but you can't go all gun crazy. The presentation is wonderful for a late PS3 game, the voice acting is top notch, and for a game that could be about eradicating zombies, like how a lot of games did around that time, the game instead succeeds in telling a story that'll leave you feeling a lot of things. And even though I'd be okay with Sony and Naughty Dog leaving this game alone as its own story, I am very much looking forward to the sequel coming up. What they have showed us so far looks very promising. Having an engaging story is not the only way you can immerse anyone into a game. Sometimes all you need is just give the basics of what they need to do and let the player just explore the setting to figure out what it's like and what happened to it over time. This can be a big risk, but when it's done well, you get something like Metroid Prime. This game does a marvelous job into immersing you into the world of Talon 4 and putting you into Samus's perspective. The level design is, for the most part, very narrowing, but the locations all feel open for you to look around, which is basically similar to how previous Metroid games worked, only now it's in 3D. While on that, I'm really happy with the approach they took to the 3D perspective. The solutions to your problems are built around the first-person perspective, allowing you to utilize it for the various dynamic fights you'll be doing and for the puzzles you'll be solving. And I can't go without mentioning the scan visor for this part. This mechanic alone can change up the way you play this game. You can make it just about getting to your goals with no added fluff, or use the scan visor to actively learn about the various environments you come across, which makes the already great areas of the game even more interesting to assess. Really, this game is one of the purest definitions of defining your own adventure. Yes, it all leads to the same ending, but the experience you get going through that ending is something that you can determine for yourself. And that to me makes it a blissful experience that I am more than happy to take part in again. I adore Platinum games. I really do. They really know how to deliver high-quality games that deliver in style and imagination. I've already mentioned Metal Gear Rising, but there's plenty more to go around. Like Bayonetta 2, for example. This game took everything the first game did well and made them even better and ironed out all the kinks. The combat in this game is not only smoother, but more versatile thanks to the available weapons and the addition of the Umbran Climax. These definitely made the combo potential even greater, and the sight of Bayonetta going nuts and slaughtering angels and demons even more of a sight to behold. Especially with the feature that lets you equip different weapons to both your legs and arms. You want to go with swords on your arms and whips on your legs? A bow on your arms and guns on your legs? Any combination that you can think of including freaking chainsaws? You can do that! And with aspects like these, fighting enemies and one of the many magnificent bosses never gets boring, even in the prologue! The game also has a story that's much better constructed than the first one. They got rid of QuickTime events, thank God, and the difficulty is overall more balanced than before. And thanks to these, as well as the strongly upgraded presentation, this is a beautiful follow-up to Bayonetta 1, and should definitely be in the libraries of those who love hack and slashes. And since there's a sequel on the horizon, I think our favorite Umber Witch will be staying for a little while longer. One reason Square has gotten a lot of mixed reactions as of late is because they announced projects that generated hype upon reveal, and then took an eternity and a half just to finish them. I get it. Games take time to create, but in the cases of Final Fantasy XV, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and especially Kingdom Hearts 3, things got ridiculous. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 3 was announced to be in development in 2013, 7 years after Kingdom Hearts 2 came along in the US, and during a time where things were springing all over the place for the series. And then, 6 years later, the game was finished and released. Yeah, that's pretty baffling, but hey, at least it was worth it, because I honestly find Kingdom Hearts 3 to be one of the best games in the series. Everything here feels grander, from the better writing that feels like it's trying to make the overall story a solid conclusion to everything established at this point, to the combat feeling like it uses extra combat mechanics from the non-numbered entries to refine the combat system from 2, which already felt like it refined the combat system of the first game, to the spectacular lineup of bosses that are even more cinematic, to probably the best selection of worlds in the whole series. This truly does feel like a game we've been waiting for all this time. And there's even more smaller things to mention, like the ability to upgrade Keyblades at long last, being able to hold up to 3 at once and switch between them at a time, underwater combat that doesn't suck, so on and so forth. Yeah, it does have a few glaring omissions, but they rarely do anything to harm the overall enjoyment of the game. This was a game Kingdom Hearts fans, including myself, were craving to get their hands on, and I'm so happy that it paid off in the end. And even though this may be the end of one saga, another is on the horizon, and I can sure as heck hope it'll continue to blow us away. Spider-Man is a king on the PS4. This game is great, you can see. Spider-Man delivered the... Pizza time. Wait, did I seriously write that?
Huh. Must have written that while I was hungry.
To the surprise of very few people, the recent Spider-Man game on PS4 is on the list. Spider-Man has delved into the video game world quite a few times with mixed results, but this PS4 game pretty much blows them all out of the water, not only in terms of being a really freaking good game about the web slinger, but also a wonderful experience that I'm sure anyone can get a kick out of. In terms of, you know, being Spider-Man, they nailed it down perfectly, with web slinging that feels like a dream and really puts you into the hero's shoes, combo that is very slick and fun thanks to the lance of reactions to what's around you, and rewarding you to following the rules of the game and thinking of your own ways to take out each goon, and the solid variety of missions that really utilize what Spider-Man can do without feeling samey. Helping all of this is the city of New York available to explore. Not only is it beautiful to look at, very accurate to the real New York, and filled with people who change their behavior depending on what's going on, making it not feel barren in the slightest, but there's also a lot to do here, like Taskmaster challenges that test both your combat, your speed, or how stealthy you are depending on the challenge, tons of things to collect and take pictures of to get a feel for the area, and even many smaller crimes that you can go in to stop. All of which are very sure to keep those playtime hours up. With all the rewards that you can get from these, you can buy upgrades to your overall abilities and your arsenal of extra firepower, as well as buy tons of different suits that not only come with new skills, but reference Spider-Man's history. The suits alone are worth it if you ask me. Top that off with a surprisingly great story, fantastic writing, amazing presentation, and even some bonus DLC released not too long ago, and yes, this is a game that does do Spider-Man justice. So go play this, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. Also, can we just take a moment to give praise to Yuri Lowenthal's performance as the web slinger?
Guess we're stuck in here for a while. Want to play 20 questions? No? How about we thumb wrestle? Okay, face punch it is.
Holy cow, does he knock it out of the park here. Alas, Platinum Games is about to make its final stride on this list. Like I said earlier, when it comes to games that are high-flying and go nuts with all the realities you can defy in a game, they are the total package. They've done so in the games I've already mentioned, and games that I love that I didn't quite make the cut, like Mad World, Star Fox Zero, and The Wonderful 101. But if you ask me, the area where they really knocked things out of the park would have to be the project they made with Square Enix, Nier Automata. I only decided to give this game a whirl based on what I've heard from tons of other people, and let me just say, I was stunned at how much I enjoyed the Square Enix and Platinum Games hybrid, directed by Yoko Taro's crazy mind. Nier Automata is basically a 3D hack and slash with some RPG and bullet hell mechanics sprinkled in there, which is a combination that's very well put together. Not only is the combat itself a total blast, being heavily reaction based and reliant on keeping the pressure on enemies, but with some of the RPG mechanics, you can customize yourself to change up how you'd like to approach battles. No matter the foe, fights never get repetitive or boring. I also gotta go over the game's setting. The ruins of a destroyed Earth look graphically stunning and do a great job of giving off the feel of dread and simultaneously the feeling of majesty, as it's interesting to try and figure out what happened based on what you see and what little townsfolk are left. Oh, and need I mention the story? It's a big deal that's all kinds of emotional and bizarre that will not toy around with how you feel. The premise may not seem like much at first, with robots all over the Earth, but what makes this narrative so special is that everyone begins to develop human emotions and truly understand each other's motivations. From beginning to end, the story not only had my attention, but had loads of moments that I found really enlightening and really saddening at the same time, especially near the end. Really, Nier Automata is an absolute gem that brought forth the specialties of two companies, added a touch of weirdness, and developed into something truly worth checking out. Glory to mankind, indeed! My gaming experience as a kid was eons more limited than it is nowadays. I was barely familiar with any franchises that originated as video games, aside from one or two exceptions, and mostly just played games based off an existing property, like a movie series, cartoon series, or even a major league sport. And even though I prefer my gaming taste nowadays, I shall never deny what my gaming taste in my younger self did for me. I still look back on many of them with fond memories, and there are still many that I enjoy playing to this day. Though, whenever I think of the phrase nostalgic game, one of the first games that comes to my mind is Star Wars Battlefront 2. Out of every Star Wars game, this was the one I came back to the most. I do really like the first Battlefront because of the memories I have with it, but when you compare it to its sequel, the jump in quality is very apparent. Everything was stepped up here. The classes not only became more balanced, but there's more of them. There's a ton more maps to mess around in that feel better constructed. The inclusion of heroes and villains from both the original and prequel trilogies was ingenious and made the game even more of a blast to play, and the modes it introduced / upgraded are very welcome. Sure, you've got new normal battle modes added to instant action, but there's also space battles that are a blast to play in terms of shooting up enemies and destroying the opposing cruiser however you like, Galactic Conquest getting some improvements, and a main campaign that actually tells a solid story, a bit like a diary of sorts. It is utterly amazing at how much this game manages to look and feel like you're actually within the Star Wars universe. I loved Star Wars growing up, and playing this really had me engaged whenever I decided to do so, especially when I was with my brother, and I will never forget the memories I had with it. Now, I don't know about you, but with Star Wars being on everyone's minds recently, I think it's time for Battlefront to make a return. I said make a return! Keep your money-grubbing monetization systems out of my life, EA! There are many things about my 2012 to 2014 self that I am glad I left behind. I've actually been less of an idiot in terms of things I like, many aspects about my videos changed for the better, and I've played a much larger variety of games to add more to talk about. But there are a couple things about my 2012 to 2014 self that remained almost exactly the same, and now, it is time to talk about why I believe that Kid Icarus Uprising is still god-darn amazing! Before 2012, I only had an idea who Pit was via Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And back then, I was kind of surprised that they brought a character from a beyond obscure title from the 1980s and made him popular. Logically, this game was the next big step that the series needed, massively overhauling the 2D platformer design with shooting elements and replacing them with a structure that's a full-on third-person shooter. Not only are each of the chapters great thematically, but they also encourage experimentation with the game's many different weapon types. There's so much weaponry to choose from that it's honestly amazing how many playstyles they considered. Some weapons make playing it safe with projectiles easy to do, some encourage getting up close and personal, and there's a good middle ground between them all. And what's even more, you can actually fuse weapons together to transfer passive buffs to them so that you can make whatever you like, which encourages more experimentation. And the bosses really drive things home. Sure, most of them don't go beyond the simple hit the boss until he dies concept, but I honestly feel they take that concept and actually make it as energetic, intense, and as fun as possible. And heck, if you feel like things are too much for you, or if you want them to become harder, the game has an amazing difficulty system that is really welcoming to newer players, yet rewarding to go further with when you get better. Like seriously, you need to bring your A game if you're going to higher intensities. You will need it. And of course, there's the writing. Sure, the story is quite simple when you look at it critically, and it feels more episodic and cartoon-like, but the writing as a whole just makes it work. Each character has their own distinctive quirk that makes them more lovable, and there was plenty of moments that made me burst out in laughter, sometimes to the point of falling on the floor, a feat that no other game has managed to do. What more can I say aside from if you have a 3DS and have not played this? What are you waiting for? I may not have that deep of a nostalgic connection with the Ratchet & Clank series, but I sincerely love it regardless. Even if some of the entries are better than others, they're all really well designed 3D platformers with solid implementation of third-person shooter elements, well-designed worlds, excellent writing, and a lot more. Though when I think of a contender for one Ratchet & Clank game that I felt was the strongest, I think of A Crack in Time. By 2009, Ratchet & Clank had already made the transition into the PS3 generation with Tools of Destruction, taking the best parts of the PS2 trilogy and refining them, while also changing up the ballgame in some areas. However, when it was time to make a follow-up, Quest for Booty happened. Ha! Don't get me wrong, Quest for Booty was fine, but that was clearly a much smaller game that was served as an appetizer for A Crack in Time. And when the time came, oh boy, did we get something special. Ratchet didn't change a whole bunch between games, as the smooth platforming skills and the awesome weapons are left intact, even with a different weapon roster, but the level design is a lot more imaginative here, since they feel like they were designed with what Ratchet is capable of, more than previously, partially thanks to the game's inclusion of time travel and time anomalies. The gadgets also feel more important here, including the amazing hover boots. Even if Clank is away for Ratchet for most of the game, it feels like the game made up for that in spades with what new toys Ratchet got. Speaking of Clank, his gameplay sections are arguably the best in the whole series. With his Chronoceptor and time gadgets in hand, his levels are more reminiscent of that of a puzzle platformer instead of the series' usual action platformer take. This sounds weird, but I actually found it to be a nice change of pace since they break up the Ratchet segments quite nicely and really get creative later on. On top of these, the story is easily the best in the whole series. It dives even further into both Ratchet's and Clank's past, develops everyone in a really unique way, and doesn't have that many plot holes despite being a story with a strong emphasis on time travel, which is incredibly impressive. And I can also commend this plot with coming between arguably the series' best compromise with the more serious elements that happen, and the series' usual hilarious writing. They surprisingly go hand in hand. There's also fun space battles to take part in, tons of collectibles, and a surprisingly good collection of bosses that make this game my favorite in the series, and one of my favorite 3D platformers. If you were to ask me what my favorite gaming genre is, my immediate answer would be the RPGs. Out of every kind of game out there, I find myself getting wrapped up in RPGs the most because they usually meet the best compromise in giving me a story, a cast of characters, and a world that I love to learn about, and supply excellent consistent gameplay on top of it. The Tales series is a great example of this. This is a series that thrives on lovable characters, engaging stories, and unique combat systems. and while many of its beloved entries qualify for this list, like Abyss and Vesperia, to me, the cream of the crop of the series in my eyes would have to be Tales of Xillia 2. Now, to say that Xillia 2 takes every last thing that is great about the series and refines it would be a tad of an overstatement, because while many things are refined here, Xillia 2 is also very experimental, namely in how it's structured. The design of Xillia 2 is a lot more open than other Tales games, with many enormous locations within Rize Maxia and Olympias, some of which are not required to go to in order to beat the game, but actually having these locations be slowly unlocked to you because of the game's death system, implemented for story reasons. I can understand why some might not like this, and I was miffed about it at first, but as I continued on, I started to like it more because I understood what they were trying to do. The game wants you to explore and find out more about Olympias than what the first Xillia offered, and more about Rize Maxia to learn what's changed about it within the time gap between games. And with the dead system, story progression can be progressed by anything. The numerous side quests that let you interact more with people within the game's world, the large and imposing elite monsters, or the many character episodes that give every party member more development and are just wholesome to witness, some of which can be a bit emotionally heavy. I mean, yeah, sure, you still have to get a certain amount of money to progress at the end of the day, but I found myself caring about what there was to offer in terms of content. Combat's amazing too, taking the battle system of the first game and making it even more satisfying than before. Linked Dart chains are easier to pull off, Luger, Gaius, and Muse add much more possibilities for possible gameplay styles, and the chromatics is easily one of the most fun mechanics within any Tales game. Top that off with a great story, amazing characterization, and some of the best presentation in the series yet, and this game deserves the praise it gets. And for an RPG, especially one from the Tales series, what else can I ask for? There were many Mario games that could have gone with on this list. He's always been delivering the goods throughout all gaming generations, and I think he'll continue to do so within the far distant future. In fact, for my favorite game of the series, I was incredibly torn between Mario Kart Wii, Mario Kart 8, and the Mario Galaxy games. But then I picked up Super Mario Odyssey, and the competition just faded away. This game was exactly what the series needed after an era of combining 3D Mario gameplay with 2D Mario game design, an expansion of the 3D platforming formula that's been present since Super Mario 64. The worlds may not be super gigantic, but they are just as beautiful to walk around in, and are sprawling with things to interact with and collect. The latter is really enforced by the fact that you don't really need to get the plot-related power moons to progress in the game. If you want to, you can just explore different paths of each world and collect more bonus power moons instead of going after the story ones and fighting the world's boss. I love this because of how much fun it is to explore the game's worlds, just in general. So much so that whenever I met the power moon requirement for that point, I still took time to explore to see what else there was to do. Now, I love how Mario controls already, and how each level is designed around what he can do, but when you use the game's newest mechanic of possessing enemies, things will get even more fun. With this mechanic alone, exploration becomes a lot easier and a lot more fun. You can easily get better swimming controls, or find a safer way across hazards, and put your shoes into some of the series' staple enemies, and see how well they play out. And depending on how you use it, you may just find something you wouldn't have discovered otherwise. Another power moon, a bonus challenge, or a load of coins that can be used in the shop to get new costumes. I love this feature because it gives the coins more purpose instead of just their usual stick in the past, and the costumes themselves look really sweet, or sometimes even hilarious. With how much there is to do in this game, Mario Odyssey will offer hours upon hours of playtime, and it's just a flat out joy to experience. If you have a Switch and haven't played this, you are doing a massive disservice to yourself. It honestly astounds me how much indie developers can create games that borderline rival or surpass many titles from larger companies out there. These are people who don't really have equipment as advanced as larger companies, or staffs as large as them either. But the reason why they've turned out so many high quality titles is that they almost always have that special bit of love and care put into them. I mentioned Freedom Planet earlier in this list, but there's also a ton more I considered for this list, like The Messenger, the Shantae series, if you want to count that, and the Guacamelee games. Whenever I think of an indie title that does the best job displaying what indie devs are capable of, the one game that instantly comes to me is Dust and Elysian Tale. Now, I'm honestly surprised that I haven't talked about this game in quite a while, because nearly everything about it is pretty much perfect. The combat is incredibly fun, graceful, and satisfying when you see what you're capable of. The levels do a great job at making use of every movement ability you have and receive along the game. The story is actually really interesting, dealing with heavy subject matters, and has plenty of intense and emotional moments to back them up, with the occasional funny moment here and there, and the presentation is absolutely top-notch. Seriously, most of the work in this game was done by one guy. How does this game look so good? Oh, and shout out to Hyperduck Soundworks for the amazing soundtrack as well. I mean, yeah, sure, it's got a couple rough patches, but I honestly don't care. This is easily one of the most gorgeous and enthralling experiences I've ever had with any game, and Dean Dodger deserves every last bit of praise for creating this work of art. I'm a giant oddball when it comes to Sonic. I know that doesn't sound like a whole lot considering there are a ton of weird people obsessed with the series, but in my case, I'm usually the guy that most of the time enjoys whatever the Sonic series puts out. Even though, yes, there are a couple I don't necessarily have a ton of fun with, like Sonic 4 Episode 1 and Shattered Crystal, I also strangely enjoy some Sonic games that a lot of people don't like, and can even find some salvageable elements in Rights of Lyric. Yeah, if you're raising an eyebrow, I totally understand that. But let me segue into the segment with this. No matter what Sonic game I play, I always find myself coming back to Sonic Colors a lot of the time. I can understand some not agreeing to that, but whenever I see another Sonic game as a potential favorite, I keep on coming back to the conclusion that I prefer Colors. The story may not be deep, but it is fun with tons of great moments and absolutely hilarious writing that really makes it stand out in my eyes. The way Sonic handles in this game is just right. Not too stiff, not too loose, just right on the nose. And when it comes to the levels, I honestly think that these are some of the best levels in the series so far. They're a visual spectacle and do a great job of mixing in speed and platforming instead of favoring one over the other. Seriously, I just can't get enough of these levels, especially Aquarium Park, Asteroid Coaster, and of course, Starlight Carnival. Combine these with some really fun and memorable bosses and some of the best graphics on the Nintendo Wii, this game alone demonstrates why I love Sonic so much. Even though I also heavily considered some other Sonic games like Mania and Generations, Colors always won me over. So lace up and reach for the stars. Do I even need an introduction to this? It is no secret that we waited a while for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It is no secret that pretty much everyone who got their hands on it praised it to high heaven. And it is no secret that it won Game of the Year at the 2017 Game Awards. But it's all for a good reason. Not only is Breath of the Wild one of my favorite games of all time, it is one of the greatest games we ever gotten in recent years. This is the purest definition of the game that lets you do whatever you want in order to finish it. Even though the game does nudge you to progress in one manner, that being to rescue the Divine Beast before taking on Calamity Ganon and saving the day, there is nothing stopping you from doing whatever you want. Sure, you could have to go to the Divine Beast, but doing so won't give you many chances to actually explore the world around you. This version of Hyrule is massive, but thankfully there's plenty to do at each and every turn. Hunting wildlife, finding food and minerals sprinkled everywhere, mapping out certain locations to explore that you might have skimmed over, getting spirit orbs to upgrade yourself. The game actively wants you to get lost within the setting created, and thankfully it doesn't lead to things dragging. And even though exploring the world and doing things either story related or not will keep you busy, you actually don't need to do it in order to reach Ganon. If you want to, you could just barge right into the final level and fight Ganon with nothing but starting equipment. Good luck not getting your head blown off, but it's still amazing that you can actually do this. I don't know what more can be said without sounding repetitive. I adore Breath of the Wild. I could get lost in it any day of the week, and it has earned the acclaim it has rightfully deserved. I've made it very clear in the past that I love it when I decided to try out a game based on what other people have said about it. A lot of the time that has led me to discovering some things I never knew I would have liked otherwise, and or expanding my repertoire of games that I love. There are many games like this, but the one game that takes the cake by storm is Xenoblade Chronicles. I started to know about this game thanks to some YouTubers like Quarter Guy initially talking about it, but I finally decided to play it during the time of Chugga Conroy's Let's Play. I have no regrets in doing so, because we've got a big boy here! The world of Bayonetta and Metroid is not only really pretty to look at and impressive for a Nintendo Wii title from 2012, but every corner has something special to discover, enemies to fight, or some amazing scenery that can not only help you level up, but is just beautiful to see. It's a safe bet that you're encouraged to explore your surroundings. I mean, you could just make a beeline to your next destination, but they made this world for a reason. And hey, they actually made a masterful tale to go along with it. Xenoblade's story is legitimately one of the best I've seen in any game ever. It's complex, yet not hard to understand what's happening. It's emotional, yet enjoyable, and the game gives you a good reason to care about everyone and everywhere, helped by the numerous cutscenes and spot-on voice acting. Sure, you can definitely poke fun at some of the model movements in them and some facial expressions, and I can understand why, but the voice actors alone are selling all of this. It's 100% believable and kept me engaged from beginning to end. I love the combat too! Every unit you get to play as has their own gameplay style that defines them, and it takes a lot of strategy to design a team to take on whatever lies at the road ahead. Battles never get dull, no matter how big or small the enemy is. Sure, most of the bosses are nothing too special, but I really don't care at the end of the day. This is legitimately one of the greatest experiences I've ever had with any game, and if you haven't played it yet, I wholeheartedly recommend you do so. It'll surprise you, it'll thrill you, it'll tug on your heartstrings at times, but most of all, it'll give you a journey you'll never forget. Yay! Time to talk about Special Ultimate again! It hasn't been that long since I went over what I love about this game in a previous video, so I'll try not to drag on this segment and avoid copying what I said in that video. Regardless of what you think of the core fighting mechanics, one thing I'm sure everyone can appreciate is bringing back literally every single character who has ever been playable in a Smash game, even down to characters that people firmly believed were not coming back, and tweaking them in just the right areas to make them feel different in a better way, or 100% better than previously. The newcomers also breathed a lot of life into this game as well. People really wanted them because they celebrated a specific part of Nintendo history, and in some cases, drew interest towards the franchise they hail from. The stages also play a part in this as well. There aren't many new stages, but the few of them that are unique to this entry are a lot of fun to fight on and look gorgeous. The returning stages have been beautifully updated to suit the game's art style. Every single stage lets you play on its original state with the hazards turned off or in its Battlefield and Final Destination forms, and you can actually play on more than one of them at the same time thanks to Stage Morph. There's so much to try out that I'm sure you'll be busy exploring these. On top of this, there's an adventure mode with tons of spirits and bosses awaiting your discovery, arguably the best classic mode in the whole series, and quite a few other minigame-like modes, all of which are sure to rack up hours and hours of playtime. And this already complete game is still going to receive a lot more DLC in the future, so it's a safe assumption that I still will be getting mileage out of this one. I do adore a lot of the previous titles like Brawl and Smash Wii U, but I feel that Ultimate is the one that displays everything that is wonderful about Smash. This is easily my favorite Switch title, and my favorite game in the series, and I'm really excited to see what Nintendo does with Smash as a whole from here. Though I really hope Sakurai takes a vacation after this. He deserves a nice long rest after this juggernaut. I was never familiar with Fire Emblem during my early years. I only knew what it was thanks to Marth and Ike's appearance in Brawl, but that didn't really tell me anything about what the series was like. But then we cut to my birthday of 2013 where I got Metal Gear Rising, Super Mario Galaxy, and the game that truly showed me what I was missing out on, Fire Emblem Awakening. I mean, I adored all these games, but Awakening consumed my time a lot more. The story was fun, I loved the characters, and the gameplay felt silky smooth and really satisfying. So from there, I was curious about the rest of the franchise. Then came the moment where I considered myself a fan of Fire Emblem. February 19th, 2016. The day that Fire Emblem Fates came out. This was everything I could have asked for out of a continuation of the series, and then some. For one thing, the stories across all three paths I actually found to be really engaging. I know I probably opened a giant can of worms by saying that, considering many people hate this game's story with a burning passion, but I just don't see it. The story made everything feel strongly at stake, and shows what can arise from the choices you make. It's not a very uplifting tale, but I honestly felt like each character's decisions mattered in the grand scheme of things, and everyone was actually maturing and evolving from each nasty situation they're put in. Helping this feeling is the overall ensemble of characters, which is easily one of my favorites in any game ever. There's all kinds of people here, from precious cinnamon rolls, to total bros, to people who are hilarious 24/7, to the Lord and Savior of Pineapples, to literally my favorite character in anything ever. There's something to love out of the grand majority of this cast. In my case, I can count the characters I don't care for on one hand, which is amazingly impressive for a roster of characters this large. And hey, we still have gameplay to talk about, and oh, what a game! Everything great about Awakening was advanced to the next level. Perhaps, while still useful, are not as exceedingly broken like they were. The weapon balancing is much better thanks to a second weapon triangle, giving everyone a chance and tweaking the very game-shattering magic of the past. Stat modifiers are much better than weapon durability when it comes to strategy. The class system received some very much needed polishing, and it was great to see the skill system expanded upon with new skills and personal ones to make each character stand out. You're sure to rack up the playtime hours by just exploring all three paths and seeing what exactly they have in store for you. Heck, I've been playing this game for almost 280 hours, and I'm still discovering things about it. And if I can play a game for that long and still want to keep playing it, you've definitely done something right, Intelligent Systems. I truly and utterly adore this game, for how much it changed for the better, the new things it brought to the table, and how much it hooked me with its story, world, and characters. I always admire how each battle had an impact on the story. I will always remember just how much I got invested in what transpired in the plot of all three routes from frame 1. And of course, I shall always remember how amazing Azura is as a character. To me, this game is truly worth the title of Masterpiece. This list was hard to order overall. I have so many games that I love that sorting out the candidates took a while, and constantly shifted around due to changing opinions. However, one decision I knew was easy was giving the top spot to Pokemon. I've grown up with Pokemon ever since I was 7 with Leaf Green, the anime, and to a lesser extent the cards. But from that age, Pokemon became that one series I could just pick up and play with no problem and easily fall in love with. And despite me easily putting a Pokemon game here at the top, what Pokemon game I decided to put here was another story. I considered so many for this spot. Leaf Green for how much it defined my childhood and how decently it holds up today, Platinum for cleaning up almost all the fluff Diamond and Pearl left behind and for the advances it made, and Sun and Moon and their Ultra counterparts were refining a lot of core aspects and trying a different structure. But I decided on my favorite one, for providing everything I wanted out of a game and then some. Enough talk! Let the king step forth! Other games have tried jousting for the spot, but Pokemon Black and White 2 deserve to be called the mightiest of all in my eyes. Literally everything in this game is a quintessential experience I want out of anything. The story takes an already great narrative for the first Black and White and goes that extra mile to make it even more intriguing than ever. The returning characters have all grown up a bit and have new challenges to face, and the new ones really add a lot to the journey, making it far more memorable, especially you, Colress. When with an upscaled story comes an upscaled region, Unova's returning locales all got upgraded or changed a bit for the better, and the new locations are up to par as well. There's a lot more to explore, a lot more minigames to do, and of course, a lot more Pokemon to find. Now, I actually really liked how in Black and White 1, you only had the newest additions to work with, since it let you have more of a chance to fall in love with the new roster of Pokemon, similar to what Gen 1 did. But I also love how they're mixed with Pokemon from previous gens in Black and White 2, because it makes tons of different team options possible, and they balance out perfectly. There are still plenty of options for all the Unova Pokemon, but older gen Pokemon are still there if you want them. And now, I need to talk about the most genius idea ever put into a Pokemon game. The Pokemon World Tournament, a place where trainers of all kinds come from every place in the Pokemon franchise just to battle their hearts away in 8 contestant tournaments. These are beyond fun to let Pokemon you've caught and raised throughout your journey to actually battle against much stronger foes and even gym leaders and champions from Gens 1 through 4. Just going to say this, I think this should come back in upcoming Pokemon games. I will do anything for this to return, even if it means sacrificing other battle modes like the Battlefront tier for that. I also love how the order of cities you visit changes things up to the point where places only accessible in the post-game of Black and White 1 are now available in the main game here. The various important battles are a ton of fun and even challenging at points, and if you think the game ends after beating the final boss, oh, will you be taken for a loop! More places to explore, tons of extremely hard boss trainer battles, a bucket load of legendaries to capture, and tons more secrets await your arrival. I'm still finding new things to do in this game, and I'm not getting tired of it. And that's because I pretty much have no problems with this game at all. Any problems I can't think of are just nitpicks. Everything else hits the mark so hard that it deserves to be my all-time favorite game. I'm the Lightning Ripper, and a lot can happen over the course of 22 years. There's a lot to learn about real life, and much to discover about all sources of media people can come up with using their insane imaginations. And in the case of video games, there's a ton to play with within that time frame, and tons of time to find your favorites. So whatever games you adore the most, I hope you continue to love them, and continue to find new games to love within the many years yet to come.